Hello everyone, and welcome to hashtag Sonic Saturdays, brought to you by IDW Publishing. Today, we will be drawing the fried egg lad himself, Doctor Eggman. So, I recommend before we start to ensure you are familiar with drawing some cartoony humans. Eggman's structure has similar drawing guidelines to our Sonic characters, but is much more complex. For one, Eggman wears clothes and isn't really a hedgehog. He's a human, and so therefore, I recommend having a handy human posing guide right next to you as we work on Eggman. Of course, before we start as always, make sure you have a pencil, paper, and a handy little reference guide for you to follow along with. Or you can follow along with your handy dandy art programs if you so choose. Ready? Let's go! Part 1. The head! Looking at a reference guide, we can see Eggman's head is shaped like a mix between Knuckles' head shape and an egg. Huh, it does kind of look like an egg. Another way to think about it is that it's kind of like a half circle. Ensure that we have guidelines for his glasses, eyebrows, and his mustache. Knowing these measurements, let's place them correctly for when we start drawing his head. Eggman is tricky, so it's okay if you need to redraw or make some mistakes on his actual guiding lines. Make sure that we don't necessarily draw him the same way we draw Sonic characters. Instead, his face is mostly focused on the front, kind of similar to Knuckles, really. Once we have these guides, let's start drawing Eggman. The easiest way to start is his glasses, which are 2 circles. Ensure to connect the glasses and make them shiny, because Eggman doesn't have eyes. Afterwards, we move on to his eyebrows. Make sure to give him a frowny face, because everyone's angry apparently. A lot of people feel Eggman's nose is a complicated mess. And it kind of is, but the best way to think about it is that his nose is shaped like a bird's beak, a little bit. It's curved and large. And of course, it supports the beautiful mustache. Eggman's mustache is always pointed up because it represents evil. For Eggman's goggles on his head, you'll need to have some perspective guides. Because Eggman's head is round, we will be placing these gears on the top of his head for the sake of perspective. His goggles are like a little wrench, so what I do is build from a circle and then kind of cut into the circle until I can get a shape that's similar to that wrench design. Then I kind of build it up and make another circle on top of that wrench drawing and build up to his lens. It's mostly just building up volumes after volumes. It's the best way to think about it if you don't necessarily want to think of it as a circle is that they're just 2 little cylinders that make up his goggles. Then make sure that you're doing the same on the other side, ensuring that it also follows perspective. Don't forget to connect these goggle pieces. Eggman always wears these goggles on the top of his head. Oh, and don't forget his little human ear that's always hidden behind his mustache. And lastly, draw the bottom of his mouth. Once we finish that, we can move on to Part 2. The body. Eggman's body, not surprisingly, is shaped like an egg, but that doesn't really help us in giving him different dynamic angles. So, like Tails, think of his egg-shaped body like a beanbag. It twists and turns, and for the pose that I'm choosing, I'm just gonna split that little egg in half a little bit. That way we kind of have the separation between his belly and his chest, and that way we can have more dynamic poses with his body. Eggman doesn't necessarily have a neck, so we can squish his body down to the point where it feels more real and less cartoony, I guess? It's not classic Eggman. Next, draw the base of his shoulders. Think of it like triangles or trapezoids. Now, you can think of Eggman's arms like cylinders. Usually, I'd start with drawing sticks and then cylinderize them. That's not a word, is it? You can start with drawing like sticks, rounding out in volume, where it's more cylinder looking. Of course, starting everything with a stick is what's most important. And as we have said many times before, sticks are your friend! Well, lines are. Make sure to measure Eggman's arms correctly as well. Then, what I usually like to do, put diamond placeholders for Eggman's hands. Line up his legs, and then give him pizza feet. And now, it's time to draw the egg! Start with his clothing. Eggman has a red little cape thing going on here, and it has a lot of white lines going around his clothing. You know, because he's a mad scientist. Do not be overwhelmed with the amount of detail. And instead, use the idea of long rectangles going across his frame. Starts in the middle of his clothing. Kind of between, at the end of his chin, to the middle of his chest. Then, we have that cutoff to make room for Eggman's large belly. It's also perfectly round, too. The tufts that make up the end of his cape are a little strange, but there's 2 tufts in the front and then 2 little curves in the back. Think of it like loose little triangles that are moving downward. And there are 2 little ovals that are on each of those little tufts. Next are Eggman's 4 golden cube blocks. We're not sure what the purpose serves, but he always has them on him. The best way to draw these golden blocks is to think of them like how they kind of resemble soul emeralds or gems, basically any rectangular gems. And those gems are strapped in by white stripes that don't have little mini rectangles on them like his actual chest does. Next is Eggman's arms. It's like a long white line from the start of his neck area all the way down to the yellow cuffs with little rectangles inside. I usually try to follow the motion of Eggman's arm and correctly place these white lines. They're not going to be perfectly down. And also, don't forget Eggman's cuffs. Okay, I know I've said that 100 times, but we can't forget it. When we get to Eggman's hands, make sure his hands are structured like how we did in the previous videos. A flat square with lines / wire / whatever you'd like sticking out. Going to his legs, Eggman's legs are like cylinder tubes that are super lanky and long, and they extend to his boots. Make sure when you are drawing Eggman's shoes, include the singular white stripe on the middle of his shoe, the ankle circles, and his sole rim. With that, you're ready to clean up! Part of the process of cleaning up is basically lightly lowering your sketch layer opacity, or just simply erasing your sketch lightly with a kneaded eraser and then carefully cleaning up your sketch with whatever it is you so choose. Remember, this process is very important because it's important to make mistakes, and this is a good learning opportunity for you. Make sure to finish what you start before trying again. It's the best way to learn. And with that, you are finished. That's a good looking Eggman right there. We want to see how you did, so send over your Eggman drawing using the hashtag Sonic Saturdays. Please, we want to see your work. If you like my stuff, be sure to follow me on my social media where I post more Sonic-y stuff. And sure to follow IDW Publishing for more amazing stories. Visit IDWPublishing/Sonic for more comic books and more Sonic 30th anniversary fun. Thank you and see you guys next week.